In a small countryside town, nestled among rolling green hills and golden wheat fields stretching as far as the eye could see, lived Freddie Bennett. At 28, he was the youngest child of a family long tied to the hospitality industry. Unlike his outgoing and ambitious siblings, Freddie was introspective, a man of quiet contemplation. His gray, almost silver eyes reflected a mind in constant motion, analyzing every detail of the world around him. While his family thrived in the social whirlwind of the Bennett Grand Hotel, the establishment they had managed for generations, Freddie found solace in the stillness of his library, far from the bustling grandeur of the hotel's marble halls. The Bennett Grand was more than just a business, it was the beating heart of the town, a symbol of prosperity and tradition. Its towering architecture and immaculately maintained gardens had drawn visitors from across the country for decades. Yet, beneath its grand facade, trouble brewed. The hotel, once an unshakable pillar of success, was now struggling, burdened by debt and losing ground to modern hotel chains. The sudden death of Edward Bennett, the family patriarch, only deepened the crisis. When the time came to read Edward's will, the family gathered in tense anticipation. But no one could have foreseen the shocking stipulation left behind. To inherit the hotel, Freddie had to marry, within 6 months. A man can only lead with a full heart, the letter read, Edward's final words cutting through the silence like a blade. This is ridiculous. Margaret Bennett, Freddie's mother, exclaimed, her voice trembling with indignation. Edward can't dictate our son's life from beyond the grave. The room erupted into a storm of protests and hushed whispers, but Freddie remained silent. His fingers drummed rhythmically against the polished wood of the conference table. He understood what the hotel meant to his family. It was more than bricks and business, it was a legacy, a duty. But marriage? The mere thought tightened around his chest like an iron grip. Then, his gaze landed on Isabella Lopez. She stood near the lobby, arranging flowers with practiced ease. Stray strands of brown hair escaped the messy ponytail she always wore, framing her face as she worked. There was a quiet resilience in her, a warmth that contrasted starkly with Freddie's own solemn demeanor. Unlike him, Isabella had been immersed in the daily grind of the hotel from childhood. Her mother, Sophia, the hotel's longtime events manager, had fallen ill years ago, and Isabella had shouldered the weight of responsibility ever since, dividing her time between caring for her mother and keeping the hotel running behind the scenes. Though they had grown up within the same walls, Freddie and Isabella had always lived in separate worlds. He had watched life from the heights of the family's legacy, while she had woken before sunrise to scrub, arrange and serve, ensuring that the hotel functioned seamlessly. But now, fate had decided to intertwine their paths in a way neither could have predicted. That evening, Freddie sought her out. He found her in the kitchen, deftly plating orders for dinner service. The warm glow of the stove cast flickering light across her face, illuminating the quiet strength in her features. "Freddie," she asked, surprised, wiping her hands on her apron. "What are you doing here?" He hesitated, then exhaled slowly. "I need to make you a proposal." She frowned slightly, setting down a dish. "A proposal?" Taking a deep breath, he explained everything. The will, the condition, the impossible demand placed upon him. As he spoke, Isabella listened intently, her sharp eyes narrowing in thought. "But why me?" she asked, her voice edged with disbelief. For the first time that evening, Freddie faltered. He searched for the right words, ones that could explain what he barely understood himself. "Because you're the only person I can trust with this," he admitted. "It wouldn't be a real marriage, Isabella, just an arrangement. I keep the hotel, and in return..." He paused, the weight of his next words hanging between them. "In return, I can give you the money needed for your mother's treatment." Silence stretched between them. Freddie could see the storm of emotions flickering in her eyes. Shock, doubt, something else he couldn't quite name. Her fate, her mother's life, the very foundation of their world, it all now teetered on the edge of a single choice. In a quiet countryside town, where green hills rolled endlessly into golden wheat fields, Freddie Bennett lived in the shadow of his family's legacy. At 28, he was the youngest of the Bennett children, an heir to a name that had long been synonymous with hospitality. But unlike his siblings, who embraced the bustling grandeur of the Bennett Grand Hotel, Freddie was introspective, reserved. His gray, almost silver eyes were always in motion, analyzing, calculating, lost in thought. While the hotel was the pride of the town, a grand establishment with meticulously kept gardens and an air of old-world charm, Freddie saw beyond its glittering reputation. He knew the truth. The business was struggling, debts piling up, the weight of modern competition pressing against its walls. Then his father died, and with his passing came a revelation that stunned the entire family. The will was read in the hushed grandeur of the hotel's conference room, its contents sending ripples of disbelief through those gathered. To inherit control of the hotel, Freddie would need to marry, within 6 months. A man can only lead with a full heart, Edward Bennet had written in his final decree. His mother, Margaret, was the first to voice her outrage. "This is ridiculous," she exclaimed, her voice sharp with emotion. "Edward cannot control our son's life from the grave." The room filled with murmurs, voices clashing in a mix of concern and indignation. But Freddie remained silent, his fingers tapping rhythmically against the polished wood of the table. The hotel was more than a business. It was a legacy, a responsibility he could not ignore. And yet, the thought of marriage, of binding himself to someone in such a calculated manner, felt like a suffocating weight. It was then that his gaze drifted across the room, settling on Isabella Lopez. She was in the lobby, arranging fresh flowers, her nimble fingers weaving delicate petals into a masterpiece of color and symmetry. Stray strands of brown hair had escaped the messy ponytail she always wore, framing her face in soft waves. There was something about her, something that had always set her apart. While Freddie had spent his life watching the world from the heights of his family's empire, Isabella had grown up in the hotel's back rooms, waking before dawn to help her mother, Sophia, manage the countless demands of daily operations. She knew hard work, sacrifice, the quiet struggles no guest ever saw. That night, Freddie sought her out. He found her in the kitchen, her hands busy plating dishes, the warm glow of the stove casting flickering shadows across her face. "Freddie," she asked, surprised. "What are you doing here?" He hesitated, then took a breath. "I need to make you a proposal." She frowned, setting down a dish. "A proposal?" And so, he told her everything. The will. The condition. The impossible decision that had been forced upon him. Isabella listened, her sharp eyes narrowing in thought. "But why me?" she asked, her voice cautious. Freddie hesitated before answering. "Because you're the only person I can trust with this," he admitted. "It wouldn't be a real marriage, Isabella, just an arrangement. I keep the hotel, and in return, I can give you the money for your mother's treatment." Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken fears and unacknowledged truths. Isabella's heart warred with itself. The chance to save her mother was tempting, almost irresistible. But to marry without love, to bind herself to a man for convenience alone? It went against everything she had ever dreamed. I need to think," she finally whispered. Freddie nodded. "Take all the time you need. Just please keep this between us." Days passed, and Isabella wrestled with the decision. She watched her mother grow weaker, the weight of reality pressing down on her. The specialized treatment her mother needed could change everything. And yet, the idea of a loveless marriage filled her with quiet sorrow. A week later, she found Freddie in the hotel library, buried in financial reports, his brow furrowed in concentration. "I accept," she said simply. Freddie looked up, startled by her sudden presence. Seeing the determination in her eyes, he stood, a rare flicker of relief crossing his usually impassive face. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice softer than before. Isabella nodded. "Yes. For my mother." The wedding preparations began at once. News of Freddie Bennet's sudden engagement to the hotel's event manager's daughter spread through town like wildfire. Whispers and disapproving glances followed Isabella wherever she went. "She's only after his money," the ladies at the country club murmured. "Poor Freddie," the businessmen lamented, falling for the trick of a clever girl. Isabella did her best to ignore them, but the judgment weighed heavily on her. Freddie, noticing her discomfort, tried to shield her, but his reserved nature often held him back from silencing the rumors outright. As the wedding day approached, the two spent more time together, crafting the perfect love story for the curious eyes around them. They rehearsed their roles as husband and wife, took dance lessons for their first waltz, learned how to move together, to speak with unspoken understanding. And somewhere in the midst of the charade, something unexpected happened. Freddie, always so distant, began to open up. He spoke of his